After 7 episodes, I think the Book of Boba Fett theme might be better than the Mandalorian theme. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So the Book of Boba Fett has come and gone. All 7 episodes have finally aired. So today I'm going to be giving you my ranking of all of these 7 episodes from my least favorite to my favorite. This show definitely felt like 2 different shows in one, so I'm going to have a lot to say. And before I do, make sure to hit the like button, comment your ranking of the Boba Fett episodes down below, and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future coverage of these Marvel shows, Star Wars shows, and all that good stuff. So without any further ado, here's my ranking of the Book of Boba Fett episodes. Coming in last place, I'm going to have to go with Chapter 3, The Streets of Mos Espa. This is the lowest rated episode on IMDb, and when I first watched it, I think I said I liked it way more than I do now, but I went back and rewatched certain parts of this, and my goodness, this episode's just simply not good. We get introduced to this new gang that Boba Fett is kind of taking under his wing, and a lot of people have called them the Space Power Rangers, and I kind of see that now because they have these very colorful bikes, these speeders that they're riding around. Not a lot happens to really push the narrative forward. It's just a very slow burn of an episode that is directed by Robert Rodriguez, who of course directed the fantastic episode of The Mandalorian when Boba Fett was introduced, so this was really an underwhelming episode. Number 6 for me is going to be Chapter 1, Stranger in a Strange Place. Now this was a fine premiere for the show. The best part about this episode was the first 5-10 minutes. We got that flashback where we see Boba holding Jango's head in Attack of the Clones. We see some shots of Kamino, and of course we get the flashback of Boba escaping from the Sarlacc. You gotta love it. That's something fans have wanted for like 40-something years. We finally got to see it in Star Wars canon. It was glorious, honestly. But then after that, a lot of the episode is this unnecessary flashback with the Tusken Raiders developing this relationship, and we all thought, as audiences, this was going to be something crucial for the overall show. As we would find out later on, it's not as big of a role as we thought, and I was really disappointed with, the role the Tusken Raiders had. I'll get into that when I talk about more episodes, but the premiere was fine. Again, it was a slow burn episode. I kind of give it a little bit of a pass because it is the first episode of a show, and I feel like those episodes can have a little bit of leeway when it comes to kind of finding their footing, but as we would find out with Boba Fett, it took a lot longer than one episode to find its footing, so that's kind of a bummer. So number 5 on my list is going to be Chapter 2, The Tribes of Tatooine. Now, when this episode first came out, there were Star Wars fans saying it's the best Star Wars content since Revenge of the Sith, which I think is just insanity, because essentially this episode is a major flashback to Boba Fett post escaping the Sarlacc pit, where he goes and develops this relationship with the Tusken Raiders, becomes friends, even family with them by the end of that episode, and we even get to see Boba go out and get his staff, and he has this moment where he's tripping and he's out by a tree, and all these different things happen. But to me, I didn't really see the need for this to be such a long flashback, because it just took away from time in the present day, which, as we see by the end of the show, is the most important aspect of the show. They spent so much time, developing the Tusken Raiders' influence on Boba, and then Boba's influence on the Tusken Raiders, and then it all kind of just fell flat by the end. And I didn't find this episode too appealing. Definitely went in an opposite direction that I thought Boba Fett's show would go. And yes, it gave us character development on him. Don't get me wrong, I'm not mad about that. But truthfully, it just didn't do it for me. I don't really vibe with flashbacks being the majority of a show that sets up a present-day narrative early on, especially post-Mandalorian. This episode just wasn't for me. Number 4 on my list is going to be Chapter 4, The Gathering Storm. Now, this is another flashback-centric episode, the last of the flashback episodes, essentially. But what I love about this is we get more backstory on Fennec and Boba, and we see Boba enact vengeance on who he believes is responsible for slaughtering the Tusken Raiders. We see him in the Slave One ship with Fennec, and he just goes and guns him down brutally. We see Fennec gets fixed up. There's a lot of cool things. It establishes their relationship, but that's really the main aspect of this episode that I dug. And of course, at the very end of the episode, we find out that Boba's going to have to establish a crew to go take down the Pikes because their presence on Tatooine is becoming overbearing. So who's he going to go get? The Mandalorian, and we get that great music cue that gave me chills and set up episode 5 and 6 perfectly. So I really liked the episode ending and the beginning. A lot of the middle portions kind of drag yet again, as it's dealing with the Pikes and the crime syndicate presence on Tatooine, and it's just a little mumble-jumble in my opinion. But this is the first episode that really kind of takes a turn from the flashback-centric story and kind of propels it to the next level and sets us up for the actual main present-day conflict in the show. So before I give you guys my top 3 episodes of Boba Fett, make sure to hit the like button, comment yours down below, and feel free to check out my Patreon where I have bonus content over there every single week, live streams, all that good stuff. It's a way to get to know you guys better. Link is in the description down below. Number 3 for me is going to be Chapter 7, aka the season finale, In the Name of Honor. Now, I just watched this episode a few hours ago, and I really thought it was a solid conclusion to the Book of Boba Fett, especially considering the story the show had set up with the Pikes. I think that it did a good job of tying in that Boba Fett storyline with the Mandalorian storyline, and this has always been kind of like Mando season 2.5 in my eyes, post episode 4. And we see Grogu decides, to not choose the Jedi way. He chooses the Mandalorian armor, and he comes back to Tatooine. There's a lot of sweet father-son-esque moments with Din Djarin and Grogu, and I love that. That's what the heart and soul of this Disney Plus Star Wars franchise franchise is. I think that's going to be crucial moving into The Mandalorian Season 3. So I really dug that entire plot line. We see some really great action. You know, Mando and Boba is like the duo we never knew we needed. We see him fighting back to back, gunning down some pikes. We see Boba riding the back of that Rancor, and he's taking out these high-tech droids that look like droidicas on steroids, I kid you not. So a lot of great action scenes in this episode. We see Chrysanthemum, all of the gang is there, they're fighting on Tatooine, and it delivers some kick-ass action. This is also the best Cad Bane episode probably in all of Star Wars in my opinion, as him and Boba have like a final face-off where you think Cad might have the upper hand, and then Boba uses that Tusken Raider spear and ends up stabbing and killing Cad Bane. We could be alive, I hope he is, because I feel like he's gone too soon and they almost brought him in and killed him real quick. But if you think about it, it does tie a little nice bow on their decades-long rivalry. So I think that it's fitting for him to die, but also a little rushed at the same time. Like I said, the finale ties this show together nicely when it comes to what was presented in the show and the story that we had. But if you really think about it, I don't really think there's much more story to tell with Boba Fett. He's now a respected daimyo on Tatooine. He's got Fennec, Chrysanthemum, and his whole gang there on Tatooine. They can run the show. I don't know how much story there's left to tell that's really that compelling or interesting, so I think they can kind of lay that to rest. Maybe those characters can show up in Mando Season 3, but the best part about this is we see Mando and Grogu in the N1 Naboo starfighter. Grogu's riding in the back where the droid port used to be, and they fly off into hyperspace, obviously into Mandalorian Season 3, which is going to be amazing, and hopefully that comes out in December of 2022 this year. It was a solid finale, but not the best episode of the show. My runner-up is going to be Chapter 5, Return of the Mandalorian. The title of this episode itself puts it pretty high up on the list. I mean, this is a Din Djarin-centric episode. Essentially, it's the Mandalorian Season 3 premiere, and I dug it. We get to see Mando wielding the darksaber, dropping bodies in like the first 10 minutes, and then we get a lot of that Mandalore backstory, which is some of my favorite content in all of Star Wars, learning more about the darksaber, which we get in Rebels, of course. We then see someone challenge Mando for the darksaber. He has a duel with that. He ends up flying back to Tatooine and getting that N1 Naboo starfighter. So there's so many great moments in this episode that are like callbacks as well. You get callbacks to Rebels with the darksaber. You get callbacks to the prequels as we see Mando take flight through Beggar's Canyon, just where the pod racing happened, and just like Luke referenced, where he used to bullseye Womp Rats in Beggar's Canyon back at home all the time. There's so much fan service and callbacks in this episode. It won us back over after the first 4 mediocre episodes of the show. And we see Mando again kicking some ass, setting up him going to help Boba in the next episode. Or should I say the finale, because at the very end of this episode is when he says, I gotta make a visit to a friend first, which leads into my #1 favorite episode of the Book of Boba Fett, Chapter 6, From the Desert Comes a Stranger. A lot of people have said this is peak Star Wars content, and the more I rewatch and think about this episode, the more I'm willing to say it might be in the conversation. When I first watched it, I think I was taken aback and almost in denial of the greatness of the episode, so I wasn't fully embracing it for what it was, but if you really think about it, this is phenomenal. You've got Luke Skywalker training Grogu with callbacks to The Empire Strikes Back. The tears swell, the chills are all there. It plays the Force theme. We hear Yoda's theme as Luke talks about Yoda and how he used to train with him. We see an Ahsoka and Luke interaction, something we never thought would happen, that gets you chills too, where Ahsoka says, just like your father. There are so many awesome moments like that for us Star Wars fans that just get you hyped. They honestly make you love this franchise even more. Of course, we see R2-D2 at the beginning. We see Mando this close to going and saying hi or dropping off his gift in person to Grogu, but he then leaves because he had to make that decision where he might get too attached. This episode packs an emotional punch. It's got the nostalgia, but it also gives us the first ever live action look at Cad Bane, one of the best characters from Star Wars: The Clone Wars and The Bad Batch show. And this is just like something that I thought we would never see. You know, growing up, I remember staying up late one Friday night to watch the episodes that had Cad Bane of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and he's just one of those guys. He's one of the most menacing bounty hunters in the entire galaxy. His introduction is great. He shoots Cobb Vanth. Obviously, we find out in the post-credit scene of the 7th episode that Cobb Vanth is still alive. I figured he would be, but it's just awesome, you know? From a desert comes a stranger. You think it's Cobb Vanth at the beginning. They set you up, and then you realize it is Cad Bane. I think he looks awesome. I know some people were complaining about his look. I honestly am a pretty big fan of it, and I think this is just a perfect episode of the Book of Boba Fett. You've got no Boba Fett in episodes 5 and 6, and they just so happen to be the best episode. It is what it is. I mean, again, I don't know how much story there is to tell with the Boba. I don't know if this was supposed to ever happen. I feel like they wanted to do Mando Season 3 sooner, and then due to COVID and all these scheduling conflicts, they kind of just settled for this. But this is the best episode. You've got Jedi, you've got Grogu, Mando, Cad Bane, and it's setting up the final epic duel in the very last episode of the show. And I love how it ends with Luke offering the choice to Grogu of either becoming a Jedi, and we see Yoda's lightsaber ignite, or he could choose the Mandalorian way. It's a very fitting cliffhanger. And we also get the flashback to Order 66. Who rescued Grogu? My bet's on Mace Windu. I think the Mace Windu setup, only time will tell. I think they'll touch on that later in seasons of The Mandalorian or even the Ahsoka show. But all that's to say, this is the best episode of the show, and this is the way. The Mandalorian is here to stay. I'm so hyped for season 3. The Book of Boba Fett was all right. I think it's definitely not top tier Star Wars. There's a lot of very lackluster episodes, a few that stand out, but overall as a show, it never really knew what it wanted to be. Was it going to be a Boba Fett story, really giving him characterization, or was it going to be The Mandalorian season 3? And it kind of got all muddled and never really had the clear direction or vision. But by the end, it satisfied me as a Star Wars fan. It gave me a lot of things that I loved, a lot of things that I really want to go back and rewatch and dive into again, and it gets me excited for the future. So it did its job at the end of the day. That's going to do it though for my ranking of all 7 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. Let me know your ranking in the comments down below. Again, what do you think of this show? Where would it place in Star Wars TV shows or your Star Wars ranking overall? Let's talk about that in the comments. Stay tuned for more videos coming soon. I'll have a Pam and Tommy review up later today. And of course, those Super Bowl Sunday trailer reactions are going to be a lot of fun. So make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of that. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. This is the way.